an Unspoiled Network podcast.
This is Spoil Me, covering What We Do in the Shadows, Season 2, Episode 9, Witches. In this episode, we finally get some witches up in this bitch. I was kind of wondering about this. And they are here to harvest sperm because it keeps them looking young, but they're not going to harvest it in the fun way. Welcome to Spoil Me. Welcome to the show, everyone. I am Natasha. Thank you very much to Max for commissioning this episode. So I'm recording a day late. I was sick yesterday. Apologies for having to put this one off, but thank you, Max, for flexibility. And I really this episode deserved some good coverage. So I'm glad that I was able to get it together today. This was so dumb, and I really liked this. It's so stupid. So when we start the episode out, we have Nandor trying to collect everybody for a house meeting. And this is the first time that we get a look at the senioritis sort of vibe that we're getting off of Guillermo. And I say that, the whole thing with senioritis is supposed to be comparable to, I've put my 2 weeks in, and now you can't ask me to do shit, because technically, in my head, I don't even work here anymore. So I'm going to keep showing up, and I'm going to do whatever I need to make it look like I'm here. And beyond that, you are not going to be getting anything out of me. And I really love seeing this energy from him all through this episode. Guillermo is really starting to question whether being a familiar is the right thing to do for his life, whether it was a smart decision, whether or not the concessions that Nandor is making are worth it even. And he cops an attitude to the point where eventually, when he is alone in the room with Colin and Nadja, he literally says, "Fuck you guys." I cannot tell you how proud of him I was for that, y'all. He said it, and I won't say that I gasped as hard as Nadja, but I definitely had a oh shit kind of moment with it. And I love for him that there's no apology. There's no moment afterwards of I really shouldn't have said that, or trying to pretend it didn't happen. There is nothing in his attitude that indicates he regrets saying it at all. And what I'm sort of seeing here, in conjunction with him kind of being over it at this point, is also a feeling of maybe I am not your familiar. I am Nandor's. When you ask me to do anything, you don't really have the right to do it. If I do what you ask, it's out of respect for Nandor, but not because I owe you any sort of service, which has been something that I've been sort of wondering about a little bit, because we have seen other familiars come and go very, very briefly, some of them. And there has always been a kind of sense when they say we had a new familiar. Usually when they say we, it's Nadja and Laszlo, as if they jointly had somebody who was on their side, but they don't really refer to Guillermo as their familiar. And yet he is still expected to do everything for them in the same way as he would for Nandor. So I'm kind of into just drawing this line in this way, and making it if you want service, go get your own familiar. It's not that hard, apparently. There's a lot of people out there that are willing to do this shit. But what we see here is Nandor's trying to have this house meeting. He asks Nadja where Laszlo is. And he is outside tending to his fruit trees, which we find out he just like takes the fruit off and chucks it because it smells bad to him now that he's a vampire. Truly tragic. This is something that I always wondered about because depending on the lore that you're reading, it's always different. Some vampires miss eating and food still smells good to them. And some, it's like unpleasant actively like this. Or it's like, it's not unpleasant, but it doesn't hold any appetite. Like, you know, the reaction that you had when you were a human, it's just not activated anymore. It's like perfume instead of food. And the idea that like you become a vampire and all of these things that used to smell great to you don't anymore is such a bummer. Like, I feel like that would really kind of ruin being a vampire, honestly. I don't know that it's worth it. My sense of smell it's a blessing and a curse, I will admit. Like, it's amazing for cooking. I'm such a good cook because of the fact that I am able to like pick up things that work together because of my sense of smell. And it also imprints these like amazing memories from different experiences in very distinct places, eating distinct foods. Also, though, I'm the one that can smell that the cat has peed somewhere in the house. And Owen can't tell. And I usually am the one that has to like track it down and find where it's coming from because he literally cannot smell anything. And some of that is that I have a better sense of smell than him, but some of it is also that he works in cleaning with like chemicals that I think have actually damaged his sense of smell. And this is also true of when I hang out with Rashawn because she smokes. So when I hang out with Rashawn, it's like a 1-2 punch because I can smell things that she can't because she smokes. So that's damaged her sense of smell. But also the fact that she smokes also fucks with my sense. Like, I will start to get headaches because the smoke bothers me. So the idea of like becoming a vampire and all of your senses get heightened, but also things that used to smell good now smell bad. It just sounds like you're going to experience a lot more negative smells than you would have before. I don't know if other things that used to smell bad to you as a human now smell good. The only thing that I would assume would work that way is blood, and that's not enough, you know? So yeah, I don't know that this sounds like a good deal anymore. Now that I'm hearing about these side effects, I'm like, actually. So Laszlo's out there doing this. Nandor tells Nadja to go and fetch him, to which she says that is not something I do. That is a job for Guillermo. And Nandor has to tell her that Guillermo is on a break right now. And apparently he has not announced to the rest of the household that there's about to be like a new system. So he has a day off a week and he gets a 15-minute break every 4 hours, which is like, you know, that's kind of the standard in most states for like good business practices. You need a half-hour break for every 8 hours of work and you need 15 minutes every 4 hours. And that is like, they find ways around that, obviously, in different industries. But we see then Guillermo just kind of curled up in this closet space, and he is scrolling through his phone with his headphones in. I was going to say his AirPods. No, they are regular wired headphones, which I think is appropriate because I'm assuming that he is given sort of the bare minimum of everything. So probably if I look close, he's not even like using an iPhone. I bet he's on some, you know, something that's like 6 years out of date. But he has gum in his mouth and he keeps blowing bubbles in this like really ostentatious way. I don't know why, but the bubbles was getting to me, you guys. I think it was a combination of how over the top it was in terms of like, if you are imagining somebody who is sort of like sulkily hanging around, not doing anything in a cartoonish sort of way, them chewing gum and blowing bubbles works with that. And I like it because I feel like this is Guillermo purposely provoking anybody who might have a problem with him. I feel like he's doing something over the top intentionally to be like, yeah, but you can't say anything to me about it because Nandor said. And it's super petty in a way that we don't often see from Guillermo. And I love this. I love it so much. Like, it really, what I want at this point is just like, just quit, dude. Just quit. Like, genuinely, at this point, you don't want this. Get out. But if he's not going to, poking and prodding everybody around him is, in my opinion, completely justified. They have taken him for granted in a way that is so beyond the words taking for granted. Like, that's not even adequate at all. He has been seen as outright disposable, despite him holding everything together most of the time. And we see that again this episode. And I feel like I wouldn't be mad at him even if he decided that he was actively going to start working against them. And just, you know, maybe not Nandor, but he could work against everybody else in the house. And I am just not really going to have a problem with it. It would be kind of fun to see him out here. Like, you know, we know that he has the vampire killer gene, however that works. But what if he wasn't a vampire killer? What if he was just a vampire annoyer? What if he just, like, did shit wrong on purpose just because, you know? And it doesn't have to be deadly things. I'm not saying sneak garlic into their blood. I don't know how that would even work, but you know what I'm saying. I'm saying, like, you just buy the wrong brand of something that you know they like. Whether that's like a cleaner or a pillow or whatever. I don't know. I'm not coming up with anything good. I don't know what he has to buy for them. Or just, like, move things around in their room so that shit they're used to isn't where it's supposed to be. Or bring them people to drain who are not attractive to them and they are not interested in, and just be like, sorry, that's all I could find. Like, anything that will sort of be, I guess I'm thinking of like praxis, basically. If this is how we're going to keep going with Guillermo, I don't know if we will ever see Guillermo actually quit. I am really hopeful we will, but I don't know what the show does if Guillermo doesn't live with these guys anymore. Splitting the show to two different households feels like it would be a pretty big deal. That would be a massive change to the formatting of everything. And they would have to get a new familiar to replace him because they need somebody who can do the day work, right? So if he leaves, that means they replace him with somebody. And what would that look like? Is he going to be constantly trying to warn this new person? Because I am not seeing Guillermo quitting and then he washes his hands of the Staten Island vampires and walks away and never, like, interacts with them again. Because that just, I don't feel like that would work very well. But maybe it would work. I don't know how they plan to handle anything, and there's no rules saying that he has to be directly involved in everything with them. It's just the way that I'm used to shows like this that are comedies that are sort of like an ensemble thing being written. So all that to say, if we're going to see him doing this for the foreseeable future, I am really looking forward to him getting pettier and pettier and mouthing off and getting attitude, like giving attitude, I should say. He's already gotten plenty of attitude. I am 100% about it. So, okay, he's in the middle of it. I love too when Nadja tries to tell him that she is taking him off break, and he just like puts his headphones back on while not breaking eye contact with her the entire time in this really teenagery, like, there's just a whole vibe to it that I love so much. So then we have him going out and talking to the crew on the steps, and he's got a cup of coffee. It's daytime. And he's saying, when I step back and look at it, being a familiar seems like a really childish career choice. Like, what am I doing? I don't know. Maybe it's time to grow up and get a real job with real people. And we see a family. This is something that I can't tell if I'm reading into it or not. We see him in the front yard. He's watching this family that's coming out of a house all together. And there's a mailman coming down the street. And it's a real sort of like Leave It to Beaver-y kind of moment of them waving to him and him waving back and then turning from them with this stricken expression. And it looked like there was a mailman and that they were waving to him. And I couldn't tell if that was me misunderstanding what was going on. I'm trying to watch this again because there's a guy and he's got a jacket on and he's carrying a box. It really looks like that's a mailman, but I can't tell. I don't understand if they weren't waving to Guillermo. Why, like, is he just looking stricken because he's embarrassed that he waved back and it wasn't to him? Or is it just sort of a like, oh, look at that happy family, I could be doing that kind of moment? I don't know. It was a weird like bit, and I'm looking at this. I'm not convinced that guy is a mailman. There was something about his outfit that really made me think he was. And looking more closely, he doesn't actually have any of the like USPS uniform on. But I also don't know what the legality is behind using that logo on television, and maybe they're not allowed to use that. I don't know. But anybody who's listening to this, if you wind up like getting to this moment and you know what the hell I'm talking about, I am not averse to having this like little bit explained to me. So then he talks about how I was trying to get blood out of my clothes with one of these little Tide pens, which we have seen before. I love that this is coming back around. And he was like, and I just realized that I don't need to do this. I could just do this. And he picks up what looks like basically a, what do you call it? Like a deodorant stick. And he has poured all of the Tide into this deodorant stick and then relabeled it heavy duty blood remover. And explains that he's been watching a lot of Shark Tank. So that is a thing that he is attempting to do, and it's not really anything. It's just kind of him repackaging a product that already exists. It's not really like the packaging that people get excited over. It's what's inside of it. So I don't know that repackaging somebody else's formula is really going to do anything. But if it makes his life easier, that's fine. That's all that really matters. So we get from there to Laszlo tending his fruit trees. And there is somebody who is whispering his name and saying that the ceremony is about to begin. And he turns and there's a goat standing in like a circle of light. And he is like, what is going on? And I love that as this person is saying the ceremony is about to begin, and the person we find out later is Black Phillip, the goat. Nandor is yelling for him to come in because the house meeting is about to begin. So he gets swept up in this like black and purple flame cloud and yanked into the air. I thought for sure this was going to turn out to be like a portal, but it just seems like kind of it's almost like a basket that just yanked him up, and the witches turn out to be hanging out in the air. So we go to credits, and then when we come back, we find out from Nandor that Nadja has this thing where absolutely everything that goes wrong, she blames on witches. And then we get like this wonderful montage of a light bulb shorting out saying witches are near. I love the look that Nandor gives the camera when she says this. She trips on like a runner, like a rug on the ground, and then says, get some witch-proof carpet tape and tape that down. And she just keeps thinking that's who it is. And I love when they go outside and she sniffs the tree and is like, oh, it's witch dust. And they're like, or dirt. But then, of course, it turns out to be witches. Now, I really kind of wish, I love this joke. I love her blaming everything on witches. I wish that we saw this before, because it's just brought up here for this one episode that she does this all the time. And like, you know, it's fine. We don't need to worry about continuity too much in this series. It's a comedy. It's not a big deal. But I do really like that joke enough that I think if they brought it up more often, it would not stop being funny. That's just one of those types of jokes, I think, that you make that joke 16, 17 times and I'm still laughing every time. I don't think I would ever get tired of that, because whatever she'd be saying it about, it would always be a different thing every time, you know? So I would be fine with it, and maybe from here on we'll keep getting the joke. I would be very happy with that. Oh, Miss T is in the chat. Just got here. Hope you're feeling better. Thank you. And I am. Yes. I have some tea here in case I need to stop and take a sip, but I haven't had to yet. So we're good. We're good for now. So they go out into the yard, and finally she is looking around, talking about how we're going to have to burn the garden. And she's arguing with Nandor because she asks Guillermo to help them search, and Guillermo is straight up just like, I think he's just chewing on like a toothpick or something, and he just says, no, that's not my job description. Which, again, I am in love with this attitude. Good for you, Guillermo. Buddy, this is the best. He's quiet quitting. That's what he's doing. So this is when Nandor sees Black Phillip, and he's walking towards the goat, not just begging him not to, because she allegedly knows what's going on. But of course, Nandor does not believe in witches. And then he gets yanked up into the air, and Colin is just like, what do you know? I'll be damned. It is witches. So we go to them driving. And obviously, Nadja is very impatient. They're trying to like follow these witches that are going pretty fast, as it turns out. And I love at one point when it's really, really easy to miss. When you are watching, I think it's Nandor, it might be Laszlo. I can't tell. But one of them is being sort of dragged along behind them. He's not on a broom or anything. But he slams like head first into a building. And it is quite sudden. It really, that shit cracked me up. It was Nandor. That's what Nadja says. Okay, cool. So, they pull up to this like sort of new agey shop. And Colin is saying, well, I can go inside and poke around and be a little bit nosy. And Nadja says, no, we can't. They'll sense you. We need somebody who's common, a schlub, a nobody, somebody whose personality is like a eunuch's, you know? And finally, Guillermo says, okay, I'm going to go. All right, I will. And she's like, oh, no, Guillermo, what? I would never have. Nadja, I root for you so often. And then you have to be like this. And I'm just like, girl, what are you doing? So he goes in. And he tries being casual, asking if there's another room. Is this all you have? It's a very, very sparsely decorated, like, shop, to be honest. So I like that it's sort of a front, because all that's in there are a bunch of salt lamps and what looks like essential oil diffusers. And that seems almost it. And he's like trying to be cool about it, but she comes at him pretty aggressively with some oil on like her thumbs that she begins rubbing on his temples. And I think that it is supposed to be almost a spell that she's putting on him to drop his guard, but it might just be that it feels really good. I don't know. And she is in the middle of doing this, and outside, Colin and Nadja get surprised by Black Phillip coming up behind them. They get swept up in that same like black and purple flame. And then this lady who runs this shop says, come with me and bring the cameras. And he tries to act like there's no cameras. But it's like, why? She clearly knows. So they go in back. And there are all of these women that are gathered around, dressed all in black with this big, like, it looks for a moment like it's going to be a bonfire, but it's this arrangement of candles. It's actually pretty dope. I really kind of liked this. I'm usually somewhat anti candles instead of like a fire, because that's a thing that a lot of people do in their fireplaces that no longer work, is like they arrange a big candle holder with a bunch of candles in it instead. And while I understand that you've got to do what you've got to do when your fireplace straight up doesn't work, I am always so heartbroken to find out you can't use your fireplace that I can't get over it. And I can't appreciate the candles. All I can focus on is the fact that that should be a full-on fire, and it's not. And it's just devastating to me. Honestly, I would rather live somewhere without a fireplace at all than a fireplace that you can't use for fire. That's too painful. I just couldn't do it. Anyway, so they're in the middle of this, and then this woman, Lilith, who is like the head of all of the witches, she says, come on and witness the ceremony and let it be documented for the ages. And it's this big sort of like dramatic moment. And then when she turns around, this other witch is like right behind her and sort of walks into her and knocks her hat off and completely ruins the moment. So Guillermo gets led down here, and the witch says, you will be kept here until the ceremony is complete. And he's like, what? Kept where? And she does this motion, and here come Nadja and Colin, and they are all trapped in this room. And this is when we get them asking him, yelling at him, really, to turn the light on, and him saying he's looking for a light switch and he can't find it. And eventually he just says, fuck you guys. Good for him. Just delightful. And the room is hundreds of feet tall, so it seems, covered in doors from every single angle. So there is no telling which way to go to actually get out of here. As it turns out, the door to leave is just the one that says salida, which is exit in Spanish. But of course, Colin Robinson tries to take like credit for this when in fact, no, he did not know anything. The woman who's playing Lilith, I don't want to take a pause right now to find out, but she is looking really familiar, and I'm wondering if this is the woman that I'm thinking. The one I know she's been in other things since then and been fantastic, but I think it's the woman who plays the actress in Hot Fuzz, the blonde that like she winds up getting decapitated eventually, and we find out later she's been murdered because she played Juliet so very badly in like the community theater production of Romeo and Juliet. The only other thing I'm thinking of her being in is she is one of the peeps in 10th Kingdom. And I've mentioned 10th Kingdom on other podcasts and gotten like a shockingly strong response from other people who are like, I never ever find anybody else who's watched 10th Kingdom. I own 10th Kingdom. I love that stupid fucking series. I don't care. But I think it's her. She just looks a little bit different. And I don't know if it's that she got a little bit of like work done. Maybe she like lost some weight, or I don't know. But it looks like it may be her. So anyway, this, all of these dudes, well, I say all of these, eventually it's all of these because Colin gets put up there too. But as of right now, he hasn't wandered into the room yet. So we only have Nandor and Laszlo, and they are strapped to these sort of weird tables, and the witches are doing their ritual here, starting the music and beginning this dance. She asks them to start the music, and they start, and it's like some hip-hop song that I don't know, and it's the wrong playlist. She says, that's for the hip-hop Kundalini class we offer Tuesday and Thursday evenings. Oh, God. So, as music begins playing, they begin dancing, and the women have these like censers of incense, and they're swinging them around, and the gentlemen are starting to actually really enjoy this because it's these beautiful women who are coming around them, you know, with these gestures and expressions that seem almost like seductive. They are not barely clothed. They're all like wearing clothing that comes all the way down to their wrists and like the top of their necks, like practically turtlenecks. But I think it's just the overall energy. And Laszlo says something to Nandor about like, I don't know about you, but I have a raging hard on. And I was not sure what Nandor's response was going to be, but he just like smiles at the camera and says, yes. So Nandor is into it. And later on, when these women are talking about harvesting their semen and they say it will not be without pain, Laszlo doesn't seem so psyched, but Nandor just goes, oh, like just magic words for him. And it's interesting because we just don't see Nandor, like, it's not that he never talks about sex, because he does. And, you know, they've talked about orgies and everything. But this is the first time I think that we've ever, like, seen him in the midst of actually being horny, whereas Laszlo is horny all the time. Like, it barely takes anything. So that was kind of funny to me to just be like, I don't know, I see Nandor as like a giant child, even though he used to be a fucking, like, monster. And I guess he's more of a monster even now. But so the two of them are like kind of enjoying themselves, actually. And that is when our friends are trying to find their way out of this room. And Nadja yells something about how she's coming for him. And he's basically like, don't hurry, babe. It's fine. Take your time. And they're opening all the doors and trying to find a way out. There is one where it's just like this flame. Oh, it's like a spiral of flame, like a vortex, whirlpool. Then there's a snowstorm that just drives snow straight up into their faces. Then there's an old lady sitting in a rocking chair, and she gets up and like flips backward and comes at them in this weird, it is super creepy. I will not lie to you guys. Like, if it were lit in a slightly different way and filmed in a different way, that would properly fuck me up. Thankfully, the show knows how to like keep it on the side that it's still weirdly funny. And they do find a room that seems to like lead out, but they wind up in another room of doors. And eventually they realize this is actually the same room. So the witches are continuing their sort of ceremony and like rubbing all over them. And when they say that they're going to be harvesting their semen, Laszlo is like, oh, actually, that sounds pretty great. And she says it will be quick. And he says, well, that's slightly insulting, but probably true, though I can go again. Honestly, I really appreciate a guy who's like, look, I'm going to come right away. I'm just going to tell you that. I will be able to do it again. Just be patient. But I need you to know. I appreciate that because you know what? It's fine. It's a compliment sometimes, you know? It's fine. But then, and this is when she says, though I'm afraid not entirely painless. So she has these two witches bring in boxes, and of course they think it's going to be full of like sex toys or something. Maybe fleshlights, which would be a very efficient way of taking the semen. But when they open the boxes, they're filled with what almost look like, and at one point, I think Nandor even says this, wine bottle openers? Something like with a sort of screw twist sort of end. Not good. And what I found so weird is that if they're after semen, they could just jerk them off and get it. And it could be a good time had by all, which eventually, that's essentially like what Guillermo winds up making a deal for them to do. But they're insisting on doing it this other way. And I don't know if that's meant to be like more effective or why they're doing it that way. But yeah, she is very excited, as she puts it, to see that they are fully engorged is and the word engorged, y'all. I can't. I hate it. I really do. So then she says, let us revert to our true form. And they all age significantly. They all look like they're around double their age at this point. And Nandor, I'm thinking that this is going to be like an, oh, they're old and ugly now kind of joke. No. Nandor says MILFs even better and really means it. Like, you can see how excited he is. And Laszlo says, it's a contrast, but something I wouldn't say no to. And I really appreciate this, that the show is like, you know what? We're not going to make it that, like, being older is inherently unattractive. It's just different. And it maybe is going to take a little adjustment because it's a very sudden change. I know that that's like a silly thing, but I really do appreciate that as a woman who's, pushing 40 at this point. It's a difficult thing to constantly see how immediately being older is considered now you're not attractive anymore. It's like a bummer. It's the same thing as being fat, Oh, she's actually weighs like whatever. So now she's obviously nobody's going to want her. It sucks. So I really do like that they're like, no, I'm still into it actually. So, she says, bring me the bowls when they're filled to the brim. And we hear Nandor saying, I don't think that bowl's going to be big enough. So finally, we have our friends that get out of their spot because Guillermo finds the Solida door. Colin takes the credit. Nobody is willing to let Guillermo feel any sort of like accomplishment over this. And when they come inside, turns out Nadja knows Lilith. And we get a really interesting... So first, Colin taking credit for the fact that he found the way out of their little secret room thing means that he is an intelligent man and worthy of having his semen extracted. So he gets put up on there as well, although they're clearly not quite as keen on him as they were on Laszlo and Guillermo, or Laszlo and Nandor. Lilith, though, it turns out, had been really close friends with Nadja. And at one point, she fucked Laszlo. And that caused them, of course, Nadja to never, ever speak to her again. I love when we get to see, because when Nadja is describing their friendship, she is saying how what Lilith originally did was run a shop. It sold all the newest mixtures of makeups and ladies' clothing and shirtings and suitings and shoesings. And we see this illustration of Lilith's womanly shop with the 2 P's, which I always love. And we've got some wild illustration here of these ladies with bustles that are so big it looks like they're carrying a bathtub under their dress. It is really, I love it so much. It was all a front, of course. It was a way to distribute the very best of semens to any witch who needed it. Naturally, we hit it off straight away, very fast friends, until she did something so evil, so despicable, so unforgivable, that we are now sworn enemies for the rest of time. So she fucked Laszlo. And, of course, understandably, Nadja is really disgusted by this. But then when it's mentioned that she took on Nadja's appearance to have sex with him, Nadja's starting to kind of be like, maybe it's adorable because he wanted to be with a woman who looked like me. And evidently this is news to her. She completely disowned this woman, but didn't get the details about any of the situation at the time. I took a form that I knew he couldn't resist. And when she turns into Naja, she made herself look just like you, my darling. She turns into a woman with a vaguely similar hairstyle. And not even similar to the one Naja's actually wearing in the scene. She's wearing the same, like, bangs and two sort of buns with her hair half up. That's it. Otherwise, she looks like a totally different person. She's super hot, don't get me wrong, but does not look similar at all. And Nacha is like, is that what you think I look like? And Laszlo says, from here, I can't tell the difference. You both look exactly the same. And he's saying, you'll have to raise your hand. I can't tell who's talking. Now, I am not sure what to make of this, because I was assuming that Laszlo was like fucking... I was thinking Laszlo was lying to her because he wanted the fact that he slept with a woman only because she looked like Nadja to sort of work for him. And maybe she wouldn't be as mad at him if that were the case. So he is trying to pretend that she looks identical just to sort of cover his own ass. But there's also the fact that just wearing a pair of jeans and chewing on a toothpick has made him look like an entirely different person to other vampires. So now I'm like, maybe to him they really do look exactly the same. Like, I genuinely don't know. And when the woman is imitating Nadja, she gets mad and says she's just doing a generic European accent. And she says, I can't believe this. How many more women have you slept with that just have long, dark hair? Have you slept with her? And she gestures to another witch, and he looks over and recognizes her and says, hello, Judith. And then she says, Nandor's got long, dark hair with an accent. Have you slept with him? And he just kind of goes, in this, like, maybe? Which we then see eventually that they are not averse to continuing to hook up at this point either. So she says, yeah, you know what? You guys are welcome to his semen. I'm going home. And the witches are like, all right, once we do this, we'll be able to look younger for a little bit longer. And Guillermo steps in and does his sort of Shark Tank thing. What if I told you that I could get you enough semen, like all the semen your little black hearts desire? You can leave today with a one-time extraction from these two well-endowed three. I love this. Collins saying three well-endowed. And I love Guillermo just says three gentlemen. After glancing at Colin's crotch, it seems like he is looking at him in a way that is evaluating and not impressed. But what happens when that semen is gone? You're out on the prowl, hunting for more. The search for prospective donors is a constant headache. And one of them says, last time when we did one of these things, it went completely off the rails. And she gestures to like another table that somebody had clearly been strapped down to, and there's just all this blood all over it. So what would you say if I could provide you an unlimited supply of semen? And I love when he's trying to explain to the cameras and he can't say semen and he just says seed willingly. And I was like, I don't know if that's better, Guillermo. I get it. I get not wanting to say semen repeatedly. I really do. But seed, it reminds me of like there's an episode of Frasier where he's thinking about doing artificial insemination, I think, and he refers to it as his essence. And I was just like, no, sir, I'm sorry, but no. And he's like, I'll get 3% of the profits. I'll call this Mimo's man milk. Mimo is short for Guillermo. Is it? I didn't know that was a thing. Mimo? All right. And I love in the interview, it's not like there's enough to go around. That stuff is everywhere. I also included Colin Robinson in the deal, which they replied and said no. So he sets this up, basically saves them all from this thing and makes it so that it's actually voluntary. Does not get any of the credit for this at all. And when they go home and open the door, Black Phillip has been hanging out in their house and has been chewing everything to pieces. So all of the pillows have been ripped apart. There's papers all over the place. Even the doll that was holding Nadja's ghost is like on the stairs, kind of like battered and bruised. This goat is so great, honestly. I love it. I am hoping that we get to see this guy again, this goat, because the voice actor is very enjoyable for this. I don't know. I just really liked it. So then we have Nandor sort of striding the hallway, looking distracted. Laszlo comes up to him, says that he's relegated to the coffin in the basement. You still, terribly. You? Full blazes. Well, I was thinking that we could finish each other off and tell no one. I'm game if you are. And they walk into his room and shut the door, and that is the end of the two of them for this episode. So then we have Guillermo, and he is going to the store, bringing these containers of semen. I hate it so much. It's like mason jars full. I'm just another schlub driving around Brooklyn with a bunch of jars full of semen. And when he steps outside, there's Black Phillip standing on a picnic table. He has been assigned to guard duty. It isn't easy for guys like us. Well, technically you're not a guy. I mean, just hanging around years doing all the shit work. Sometimes I wonder if they'll ever make me a witch. And Guillermo, yeah. Anyways, I gotta go. See you later. What happens if they do make Black Phillip a witch? Like, does he turn into a human, or is he just a goat witch? Genuinely want to know. And also, I thought that Black Phillip was meant to be like the devil. But if this might just be like the name for their little pet goat, in which case I love it. And the fact that they were like, oh yeah, we can do a voluntary donation of semen, but also we're not going to like take any right now and just send them home fully erect and aroused. Weird choice. I'm fine with it because I do enjoy the fact that this show is like, oh yeah, the dudes fuck other dudes too. And it's really not a big deal at all. Like, everybody is pansexual in this universe, and that's fine. So I like that a lot. But I did kind of go, y'all could have just like started off right here, I guess. And I'm wondering exactly how much money they're making off of this, because he says I'm taking 3% of the profits. So the witches are paying for it. And what does that income look like? Like, how much is he making? And also, they're talking about getting semen, but it's unclear to me, would this work with like human semen, or does it have to be vampire semen in order for it to work? The youth serum potion, whatever you want to call it. It's kind of like a hocus pocus thing, except a lot cruder and lewder, which I'm fine with. And, you know, the idea of setting this up, there was a part of me that was like, oh, sweet, Guillermo is starting something that's going to result in him having his own income. But it won't be, because it's totally dependent on the vampires. So I was sort of hoping that this could be a stepping stone for him getting the hell out of this place. But I don't think so, actually. I think that, like, it's probably going to be... If he gets out of there, I don't know what Guillermo does for a living. You know, genuinely, what skills does he have? He obviously can like run shit. I'm not trying to say he's unskilled, but what does he do that he could put on a resume? He would have to lie a lot about his employment history unless he trusted that Nandor would give him like a good recommendation somewhere. And I wouldn't trust anybody in that house to give an accurate assessment of what Guillermo is capable of, because nobody appreciates everything that he can do. So he does all kinds of shit and they don't notice. I don't know if they would ever be able to say, you know? So that's true. Janice in the chat says he used to work at Panera. I forgot about that joke last episode. That's right. He was in line for assistant manager. So yeah, he's got this big gap now. And he would have to lie and fill it with something. So he has, I guess, the skills potentially to go back out there and do that again, but it's been a while. How long has he been working for them? 11 years? 12 years? That's a long time to have used to be doing something. I know. As somebody who used to be doing something, I don't know that you could drop me back into a kitchen these days and expect me to be able to pick up where I left off. But that said, they were running him pretty ragged, and a lot of the reason I don't think I could pick up where I left off is because now I do a desk job where I am not on my feet all day, and it is unthinkable doing the sort of like physical labor I used to. And Guillermo, he is running around all over the place, so he actually may be better equipped to pick up than I am, you know? That was something that I really enjoyed too, was like when we saw him fighting vampires in that one episode, despite the fact that he is not somebody that is, quote, in shape in the way that we commonly think of that word or that phrase, he is completely handling everything like he has gone through very serious martial arts training. And I don't know if that's all a body double or if it's the actor who actually got trained to do that stuff. But I really like the idea of there being an extremely capable, coordinated, badass, fat vampire killer. I'm into it. You know, it's just not something that you see. It's usually like played as a total joke. And I'm just holding out hope eventually that he like leans into that somehow. But they would have to do something, I think, to really push him over the edge. And I don't even know what that would look like, because so they have done such shitty things to him already. What more could they do to get him to a point where he is ready to not only just leave, but also be like ready to kill vampires over it? I don't know if I could ever see him trying to kill them. I don't know though. Maybe that's, you know, I was saying before, if he ever quit, how would they manage to keep his story in line with the show? But it didn't occur to me that what if he decides he wants to try and kill them, and the show just becomes them trying to like dodge Guillermo's attempts to kill them, which would be that would be quite a change. I'm not averse to it, but I don't know, like, yeah, I don't know. I mean, it could be him trying to defend them, but we've seen a little bit of that already. And I like the idea, since they haven't respected him at all for so much of this. I really like the idea of them eventually growing to respect him because they're afraid of him. You know, if that's what it takes, maybe that's what it takes. So, all right, I'm a little under time here, but I really feel like I covered everything. So I think I'm going to wrap this one up just a drop early. But thank you, Max, very much for commissioning this. Appreciate you a lot. Sorry about having to push it back, but I really did enjoy this episode, and I'm hoping that I'm hoping we don't necessarily have to like get back the whole entire coven, but I would like more witch content, because that's a pretty fun thing, you know? And I like the idea of, I'm curious what Nadja's ongoing feelings are going to be now that she realizes how many people Laszlo has slept with. I had asked the question in a previous episode whether or not they were allowed to sleep with other people, because we know that they'll do orgies and stuff, but that's sort of like together. And I got the impression that that wasn't really allowed. So, because, you know, she was having this whole like illicit romance with, what's his face, who got his head cut off yet again. And she seemed to feel pretty guilty about that. And like, this wasn't okay. So I'm assuming that they are meant to be monogamous. And I'm wondering if the revelations like this are going to be a problem. If, you know, if this is something that she's just going to have to get over in a day or two, or if it's going to be a sort of ongoing, like, you know what? I don't know. Maybe we broke up. Maybe that's it. I wouldn't be mad about that either. The idea of like Nadja out there trying to date in the vampire world, vampire Tinder, would be pretty interesting, I have to assume. All right. Thank you guys again so much for hanging out. Appreciate you a lot. Thank you again, Max. And until next time, toodaloo, motherfuckers.
That was an Unspoiled Network podcast.